The Sand People of Utah. It started as nothing more than a whisper in the desert wind, something you'd hear on the edges of sleep after too much sun, too little water, and hours of aimless hiking through the red stone bluffs and dry gulches of southern Utah. But that whisper became real the longer I stayed in that cursed patch of land. My name is Mason Keller. In the spring of 2019, I was a freelance photographer looking for ancient petroglyphs and little-known slot canyons in Utah's backcountry for an outdoor magazine. I'd been out there a dozen times before, always solo, always careful, but this time I went deeper. I followed a trail not on any map, one that a Navajo man named James Begay had mentioned in passing over a fire the year before. South of Bluff, about 10 miles off the main road, he told me. If you ever go there, don't stay the night, not even for the stars. When I asked why, he just stared at the fire and said, "That's where the Sand People walk." At the time, I chalked it up to tribal folklore, like the skinwalkers and ghost dancers I'd read about. But once I stood at the entrance of that hidden gulch, with the sun behind me and nothing but silence ahead, James's words came rushing back like a warning I should have taken more seriously. The first thing that felt wrong was the stillness. No wind, no birds, not even the scuttling of lizards along the rock. The canyon walls rose on either side like jagged teeth, twisted in layers of orange and crimson. My boots crunched over dry earth and scattered bones jackrabbit, I assumed. I went on, telling myself it was just the isolation playing tricks on my nerves. About a mile in, I found a cave mouth half hidden behind a curtain of brush. Carvings surrounded it, ancient, weathered, but unmistakably human. Not the usual Anasazi glyphs either. These figures were tall and thin, with sunken eyes and claw-like hands. One depicted a human figure being dragged down into the sand, mouth open in a silent scream. I snapped some pictures, pulled out my headlamp, and ducked inside. The cave air was colder than expected, dry but heavy. The walls were covered in dust, but the floor had strange grooves. Not from feet, from something being pulled, maybe clawed. I followed the tunnel about 30 feet in, where it opened into a small chamber. At the center was a pile of rocks, like a cairn, and resting atop it a skull. Human. That's when I heard it. A soft, dragging sound, like someone slowly pulling a burlap sack across the cave floor. I killed my headlamp. My heartbeat thundered in the dark. There was no breeze in here, no explanation. And yet, I could hear something shifting in the sand, just beyond the chamber. I turned the light back on in a panic, swept the beam across the stone, and saw nothing. But the grooves in the floor were fresh. I swear they were. I got the hell out of there, fast. Back outside, the sky had darkened. I checked my watch. It was only 3:40 p.m., but clouds had rolled in fast, thick, and yellowish like an incoming dust storm. I tried to retrace my steps, but the trail seemed unfamiliar now. The rock formations subtly changed. Or maybe my nerves were playing with me. I hiked for hours, but every ridge looked the same. By dusk, I had to admit I was lost, and night was falling. I made camp beneath an overhang, gathered some brush for a small fire, and tried to keep my mind off the shadows. I'd been lost before. I had food, water, a GPS which now kept losing signal, and a knife. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That night, I dreamed of sand flowing like water. It swallowed towns, people, everything. I saw long-limbed creatures emerging from beneath the dunes, eyeless faces buried in folds of dry flesh, sniffing the air like moles. One turned its head toward me and spoke, but its mouth was just a hole of grinding stone and teeth. I woke up to silence and then a sound like a sigh just outside my shelter. I sat up, heart hammering, and drew my knife. The fire had died down to embers, but I could see the sand around me shifting. Something was moving beneath it. Not on it beneath. I backed toward the rock wall, scanning the area, but there was nothing. Then I looked up. Above me, crouched on the ceiling of the overhang like a spider, was a shape. Long arms, pale and caked in dust, its face flat and featureless except for a wide, lipless mouth. It didn't blink. It just dropped down behind me without a sound. I ran. I didn't pack my gear, didn't grab my bag, just sprinted through the desert like a lunatic. I ran until my legs gave out and I collapsed beside a dead tree. Morning came, and with it, a horrible realization. I was even deeper in than before. The landmarks were completely unfamiliar. Worse, my GPS now showed nothing, just a gray screen with static flickering at the edges. Then came the voices. They started around midday, whispers on the wind, just under my breath. I couldn't make out the words, but they grew louder when I moved toward the west. It was like they were leading me, pulling me deeper. That night, I found an old camp. Not mine, someone else's. A rusty shovel, torn canvas, and a journal in a Ziploc bag. Most of the pages were destroyed, but a few were legible. Day 3. Something is out here with me. Not human. It waits for nightfall. Day 5. Found a burial mound. Not Navajo. Not anything I recognize. Bones in fetal position, mouth filled with sand. Day 7. They watch from beneath. Don't walk on the soft earth. They feel it. I stayed up all night, knife in hand. Around midnight, I saw movement again. Dozens of them this time, figures emerging from the sand itself. Slow and deliberate. They were gaunt and wrapped in tattered cloth like mummies, their skin the color of dust. I held my breath as they walked right past me, never looking my way. They weren't walking at random. They were following something I couldn't see. By morning, they were gone. Over the next 2 days, I followed dry creek beds, hoping to find a water source or maybe a dirt road. Instead, I found more burial mounds, each older than the last, with sun symbols and spirals etched into the stones. I began to realize something horrifying. This wasn't just a canyon, it was a necropolis, a city of the dead buried in sand. And I was in the center. My water ran out on the 4th day. Hunger clawed at my belly, my lips were cracked, my skin blistered, but I kept going. I had to. That night, I gave up. I lay down in a dry ravine and waited to die. But instead of sleep, I saw something incredible. The stars began to vanish, one by one, as if blotted out by a great shape moving across the sky. Then came the vibration, low and deep, like the hum of something buried beneath the earth finally waking up. The sand began to flow, not blow, but flow upward. I saw faces in it. Not human, but once human. They stared at me. And then the sand people came. They rose around me in a circle, heads bowed. One step forward, it was the thing from the overhang. It reached into the ground and pulled something out. A bone knife, ancient and etched in glyphs. It pressed the blade to my chest, not to kill, but to mark me. I passed out. When I awoke, I was at the edge of the canyon. My bag was beside me. My camera was gone, but the journal was still there. My skin bore a strange scar in the shape of a spiral. I limped back to the road and flagged down a park ranger after walking 6 miles barefoot. They took me to a hospital in Blanding. I told them I got lost hiking. No one questioned it, but I didn't tell them what I'd seen. Who would believe me? Weeks later, back home, I developed the few photos still on my backup card. Most were blurry or overexposed, but one was clear, the cave wall with the figure being dragged into the sand. Only now, there were more figures in the frame. Thin, long-armed shadows standing at the edge of the light, watching me. I never went back to Utah. But sometimes I hear that whisper in my dreams, the sighing breath of something ancient and buried, waiting for nightfall, waiting for those who walk too deep into the land where the sand people sleep.